Everyone, if I could have roll call, please.
Yeah, it is on. Chris Brown. Adam Carson. Here. Linda Hoke. Here. Lindsay Keisman. Here. Ray Lapinas.
Here.
Amy Rath.
Here.
John Reinert.
Here.
Carolyn Schofield.
Here.
Connie Machini.
We'll move to public comment. First person is Tiffany Velkman from ONA.
I'll get John. There you go.
Okay, thanks. Hi, Tiffany Valkema, Program Manager of the Autism Resource Center at Options and Advocacy. Good evening. First, I'd like to extend my welcome to the new board members and to thank you for your public service. I'm here today to speak about the vital work of the Autism Resource Center at ONA. Our center is an essential resource for autistic individuals and their families, providing services that empower, support, and educate. ARC offers a range of critical services, including client and family education sessions with goals tailored to individual needs, advocacy services to ensure individuals with autism receive the education, healthcare, and support that they need, social skills groups and caregiver support groups, collaboration with community partners in planning for transitions into adulthood, and autism-related trainings to McHenry County residents, providers, first responders, and business owners. These services have a significant impact on countless families throughout McHenry County. While this year has brought difficult programmatic decisions due to funding challenges affecting both the board and our community partners, we remain committed to our mission. Despite these obstacles, we continue to operate and deeply appreciate the support you have provided. Investing in these services is an investment in a stronger, more inclusive McHenry County, one where every individual has the opportunity to succeed. We would love to personally show you the impact of our work. Please consider visiting our agency to meet our team, see our programs in action, and learn more about how we serve McHenry County. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person is Alejandra Lopez of AID.
Hi, my name is Alejandra Lopez. I'm the director of AID, or the Association for Individual Development in McHenry. I just wanted to come to speak about the funding concerns. So like many of the other local behavioral health nonprofits, AID is largely funded by Medicaid, and our funding, 80% of it comes from Medicaid reimbursements. The other 20% comes from donations and grants like our McHenry County Mental Health Board grant. With the uncertainty of federal funding and what seems to be a confirmed expectation that we will receive some sort of Medicaid cuts in the near future, the decreased amount being received from the tax referendum is concerning more now than ever. The possibility of a reduction in the mental health board funding in addition to these future cuts puts our client services at risk as well as our agencies as a whole. We came together, all of us came together to assist in the mental health board's efforts to promote and advocate for voting yes towards the switch from the property to sales tax. And we are currently doing our part in advocating by reaching out to our local representatives about the dire need for Medicaid for our communities and the vulnerable populations that we serve. So I think I can speak for most of us now that we are looking for you all to come together and fight for the needs of our community and the vulnerable populations that we serve towards a solution for the misguidance that we received. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment at this time? With that, we're going to move on to the approval of the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of January 28th, 2025, and our special meeting February 8th of 2025?
Second.
All in favor say yes. The motion carries. We have no presentation today. The President's report on February 8th, we had our strategic planning meeting. There are details in our board agenda with regard to that. And it's also been filmed, so you can, if you've missed it or you'd like to watch that, it's available. We're also going to be looking for the completion of the FOIA and Open Meetings Act training for the board members. Once you're done with the training, if you could print out the certificates and provide it to the staff, that would be appreciated. There are also training and network opportunities that you may find in the appendix of our board package. Part of our hot sheet, there's a number of interesting programs that are being presented. I'd like to move now to the director's report.
Oh, here it is. All right. Thank you. Please let me know if you have any questions from my director's report that I put in the packet, but I'm not going to be going through it except highlighting some of the state and federal developments and then addressing the transportation item later on the agenda. So regarding more state level, Governor Pritzker did issue the order to merge the Illinois Department of Human Services Division of Mental Health and the Division of Substance Use Prevention and Recovery into a new division of Behavioral Health and Recovery Services under DHS. This should take effect in 60 days unless lawmakers oppose it, and we are going to be relying on our community to let us know of the impact of this because, again, we're hoping that there are efficiencies, but that there are also not cuts to client services because of the merger. So again, we will be looking for the impacts of all this from our community. The Illinois state budget, we put that in your packet. Again, highlighting the continued resources that are being devoted to programs with minimal cuts on the state level, especially with some of the anticipated cuts on the federal level. But again, we're going to get more details, and there's some analysis that is being done on those fiscal year budget projections. So there are opportunities to voice some concerns as well. On the front of legislation, there is lots of bills. I included the ACMI bills in your packet that we're monitoring. So a lot of those bills are related to behavioral health parity, which is really wonderful to see. I know lawmakers are moving with the plan to enhance reimbursement rates and network adequacy for behavioral health services, and a lot of that's spearheaded by Senator Karina Villa and Representative Lindsay LaPointe. So again, there's that bill, and there's many others on behavioral health parity that we're really excited to see in the legislation. So we will keep everybody abreast as to where those bills go. Lastly, I'd like to address some of the federal bills, some of which a lot of the providers here are concerned about. We also had the discussion at Network Council yesterday. The U.S. Senate approved a budget resolution for fiscal year 25 last week with a vote of 52 to 48, following a 10-hour voting session. The resolution emphasizes issues related to border, military, and energy, authorizing approximately $340 billion in spending, which will be balanced by equivalent spending cuts. This budget resolution serves as a framework for one of the two budget reconciliations the Senate aims to pass this year, with the second bill concentrating on tax cuts and spending reductions. This week, the House of Representatives is set to vote on its own budget resolution, which aligns with Trump's administrative priorities concerning border security, defense, energy, and taxation. This resolution proposes a $2 trillion in spending cuts that may affect Medicaid and other essential health care programs, while also permitting up to $4.5 trillion in expenditures for tax cuts. President Trump voted his support for the House's unified approach to the budget. So for reconciliation process to progress, both chambers must agree on a joint resolution. So that's where we're not sure how this is all going to come out, and many of the providers are, advocating for the reduction in Medicaid not to occur because of the needed services. We had a discussion at Network Council. Again, we're going to be addressing the local impacts, but as AID mentioned and many other agencies, we have agencies that are not only AID, but as high as 80% funded by Medicaid. So we are continuing to assess the local impacts if there are draconian cuts made to Medicaid. And again, any questions with my overall report, please let me know. But on a lighter note, I did want to mention that the IDD agencies are hosting the IDD Expo on March 8th at Woodstock High School, which I do encourage you guys all to attend if you can. And I did want to mention, too, that at Network Council, we did roll out the information regarding the mid-year process, and that we're getting forms on Foundant for them to do the mid-year process. And we can talk more about that during the finance meeting. So I believe, one more thing at Network Council I wanted to announce is that Northern Illinois Recovery Center did mention that they are going to be opening an IOP program for adolescents with substance use disorders. So I did want to give the board an update on that too. So more to follow. We'll probably have more information next month once they release it. So that's all I have for my director's report.
Thank you, Leo. Amy, ethics and compliance.
Oh, thank you. All right, sorry about that. So included in the agenda is a summary for the previous fiscal year. So work for this year is just beginning. There's a high level included in here regarding all of the different issues, including service delivery and critical events. If anyone has any specific questions about anything, we can discuss. Otherwise, it is summarized in there. I do want to, especially since there's so many providers here, extend thanks and gratitude. I know that we asked you to go through a bit of a change regarding how we are looking for reporting. Appreciate that change management is a process and know that everybody is very busy doing the work that you do. So since there are so many here, again, just want to extend gratitude for making sure that that we appreciate the work that you do and that you are willing to work with us in terms of the reporting in order to make it easier across the board for everyone. So just wanted to interject with that. That's not in the packet, but figured I would take advantage and say that. Again, all of the different dimensions are listed in there across the quarters, and it's a summary of the previous year. So I don't know, Bridget or Karen, apologize. Is there anything additional that you feel like we should highlight? No. That's all I have. All right, thanks.
We did have to reschedule our finance committee, and for those of you that Bridget's been in touch with, it does look like we're going to schedule that for next Tuesday evening at 5 p.m. So the attached documents in our packet, most of these are kind of the beginning of the fiscal year numbers. I did want to draw your attention to our version number 3 of last fiscal year. Should be wrapped up by the end of this month once Mel is able to reconcile numbers with county, but otherwise we suspect that this will be the final version of fiscal year 24. Any questions for me? Great.
Thanks. I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda, but I was just looking to remove A, B, and C, so I wanted to just approve the consent agenda with 6D and E.
So moved. May I have a motion? Second? Discussion? No discussion? If we could move to a vote?
Okay, we're having technical difficulties here, so we're going to have to do a voice vote.
Do all in favor, too?
Ready?
I believe
Or do you want to do?
You can do all in favor,
all in favor?
right? Or what are we doing, consent?
Yeah, it's consent.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving to old business.
Gotta go back to 6A.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Item 6A, finance reports.
I'll make a motion to approve it first, but I have some discussion. Okay. so
All
can we-
in favor?
Well, no, I want to go into discussion first. Okay, I have a question, and I apologize because we didn't,
Is this just A?
yeah, just as.
Thank you.
just A. And I guess I could do the next two. I have questions on all of them, just, and so I apologize because we didn't have finance. On there with the sales tax receivable, that 2.4 plus million. Okay, Leo. Just, where, could you just clarify where that came from?
So that is the amount of the December, January, and February payments that we have, has been received by county, so that is the final amount that's receivable. It has not been, well, it wasn't received at 11/30, but we know the amounts. So that amount is the 3 payments that we did receive for those months that will be moved to fiscal year '24 as revenue.
So did that end up being, then, I think on the other ones, was it higher than projected?
It's right about, I
About
mean,
where it
it's
was?
off by a few, like maybe $10,000-$20,000.
Okay.
We were pretty close to what they,
Okay.
I can go back and get you an exact
No,
amount.
I just was curious because it wasn't in the one and then it came in there, so I was just wondering where it
Yeah.
came from. Okay, thank you.
May I have a motion to discuss 6B?
We've got to take a vote first on that. It has to be a voice vote, or, I mean, a roll call. Sorry, because it's finance.
Thank you.
I'm going to have to roll call just because this is not connecting for some reason. Apologies. Ready? Chris Brune? Yes. Adam Carson? Yes. Linda Hoke? Yes. Lindsay Keisman? Yes. Ray Lapinas?
Yes.
Amy Rath? Yes. John Reinert?
Yes.
Carolyn Schofield?
Yes.
Connie Machini?
Motion passes. Discussion 6B.
Well, and I'll first make a motion to approve it. I'll second. Sorry, can I? Discussion? Okay.
Discussion.
And I'm sorry, this kind of ties into that, and I should have just put them together, but, so this is where I guess I was confused on if it was ahead of it, because it was, the version 1 was at 10 million, and then it went on version 2 to 11.652.
So basically, that adds in the January, for December, it adds in the January and February payments that were receivable still, plus the $10 million we're anticipating getting for fiscal year '25.
So that was the remainder of the,
24 that hadn't been
Property
received.
tax.
Right.
okay,
Well, no, not property tax, it's the sales tax that was received in,
the overlap.
Yeah,
Okay.
those
the
overlap
you're
funds.
right. Okay, I get it, that we already had done this. So, I guess that's where my question was on if it was higher than anticipated, because was the version 1 was at 10 million, and then the version 2 is at 11.6, that's actuals now?
That's actuals for 24 revenue that's receivable in December, so.
So is that still,
That is the January and February payment that we know the exact amount for now.
Okay.
That I was able to go back and put in, that I didn't have those numbers before.
so that's why, I guess my
It
question.
was a mistake on my part that I did not
No,
put the,
and
yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out why it was, like, that's where my question was,
Mm-hmm.
if we were ahead on like the 10 million and.
No, it's just that the first version, I didn't think about the fact we still had a receivable amount for 24 that was due.
Oh, okay,
So-
I get it. So we're actually at the 11 though.
Right.
Okay, cool. Thank you for the clarification.
Any further discussion?
Oh, and I'm sorry, I do have one more on that same. Oh, no, you know what, it's next agenda item.
If I could have a voice vote?
Can I try to push this through, see if it
Sure.
works? Did it work?
Motion carries. If I could have a motion to discuss 6C.
I'll make that motion to approve it.
Discussion.
Thank you, and sorry, last one. On these, so for the January 31st, the ending with the remaining budgets and will this get with the overtime, the tuition, the consulting, and the special studies? Will that show up in the February one? Because we had just approved those, so it won't show up till
Yeah,
February. 'cause
it'll
it's
show up in
like-
February that it had been approved at the,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, thank you.
If we could have a vote.
One second. And go.
Motion carries.
John, you haven't voted. Just hit the screen.
Touch the screen, yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Moving on to old business. The first item under old business is a statement of economic interest. The online completion is due by May 1st, 2025. An email confirmation will be needed. 7B, transportation follow-up.
Thanks, Ray. As I reported in my director's report, I had follow-up on opportunities for our transportation platform with the director of the McHenry County Department of Transportation, Scott Henning, and cleared up some misconceptions about our contracted Keisman platform. And I did send the board members, I know you've had it in packets in the past, but I sent you the guidelines in your appendix. Together, we are working on further collaboration to assist his department in increasing the enrollment closer to the targeted projections, since there will be some underutilized dollars at the current rates. But the main misconception about Keisman platform was that we had regular users, which we do not. It's just the opposite. And users are limited on our platform, as noted by our guidelines, which is basically for therapy services. And there are normally newer clients for that particular provider that are needing to access treatment where transportation is an issue early in treatment, besides the emergency reasons that that come up during the treatment cycle for a client. So until they can find a permanent solution. So Scott kind of understood the differences and the value of our distinct services, which, really, cannot service similarly, or they might be able to in the future. But ours is more of an emergent need where there's not time to engage in a registration process. Scott was hoping that we could provide him with a list of clients originally using Keisman. However, due to our role as a funder payer of services, we're not authorized to release client information. However, I suggested that Scott attend Network Council yesterday to broach this request with providers and obtain feedback and assess the process for providers. For example, if they needed to do releases, if any, to secure the county a list of clients from their agencies that could use transportation. Since Scott's idea will really help to reduce the registration burden and obtain county support, he can obtain county support to add these clients directly to his list and avoid the cumbersome registration process. So it is a great solution for a portion of the population for our providers. So we had an excellent discussion that took up a bulk of our time at Network Council, but it was important to process the transportation opportunities, which I think this board is interested in, and that we're all interested in McHenry County. We already know that our platform, our Keisman platform, or that our platforms, the two platforms, are different in many ways that our providers continue to articulate further. Current users of our Keisman platform are actually our providers themselves, and not the client. McRide also won't work for many of our clients who are unable to manage an Uber app on their phone, or be assured that they are scheduling a ride themselves for their treatment. So again, the platforms are different. But as presented in my report, we don't have regular users. Again, this serves an emergent need that doesn't have time for any registration. Network Council did ask Scott if providers could be the users and schedule the rides that they currently do on clients like they do for Keisman. This could be a possibility in the future, and versus the clients being the users in the DOT platform. Also, special needs like lifts, et cetera, can't be done on the McRide. Platforms aren't comparable, but we are looking at those users' situations. So we can't look at those users similarly. However, our providers have a lot of other clients that could benefit from this platform. The county program is a huge benefit that should be utilized more. To assist our county in gaining other general users and clients from our funded agencies, we could definitely benefit from the McRide since it doesn't have all the restrictions our Keisman platform has, and it bypasses the registration process that Scott is proposing. But we did confirm that a release of information would probably be needed by a majority of our agents to release client names to DOT. And they also requested that future client names that are going to be sent to them won't be linked in any way to an agency to also protect that information. So Scott was going to come back to us once he explored all of this further and let us know next steps. We also discussed the use of the future IRIS system that we're looking at for referrals, which would be a great automatic way, an ongoing way to give this referral to the Department of Transportation, since it would also have a release of information connected with this. However, the system is a few years out since, we're looking to possibly invest in this in fiscal year 26, and then there'd be an implementation process. And clients could benefit from this McRide platform so much sooner. So it was an excellent discussion, and we look forward to helping to implement the next steps that would aid many clients in our network on unlimited rides for any purpose versus the restrictions that we have in the Keisman platform. So it does serve a more comprehensive need than our Keisman platform currently does. So it was a really great discussion. Questions with?
I'm trying to pull Carolyn up.
Oh, thanks. And I have a question, but I did want to make a comment because I did attend that, so I really appreciate the discussion. And all that attended, it was a great discussion. I think it is important to note that conversations will continue, which I'm, thank Scott and all of the providers for continuing with those conversations. It's because he's trying to find a solution for everybody, and I think I just wanted to highlight the fact that, any dollars that we can save in transportation, we can use and put back into provider services and programs. So I think it's just really important to continue these efforts to try to find collaboration anywhere we can, as, satisfying the needs of the providers and their clients, but also being able to take that money off of the mental health board and use it for programs and services. So thank you for continuing in those discussions.
Any further discussion? Then we'll move on to new business. We'll discuss the first item on our agenda, which is the fiscal year 2024 annual draft budget report, which we have in front of us.
This is a very draft of a draft. So we don't put this in the packet because it is a draft, but what we want to do is send it out. It's so much in draft form that there's some things missing. But what we want to do is send it out electronically and get all eyes on it for edits and anything that you see. So I know that Bridget's going to finalize. Yes, we have a whole page that needs to be entered. That's a trauma-informed page. So there's a lot of things. So we couldn't get you the final copy today. So we do plan on sending it out. It's not a final copy, but a draft. We will send it out by the end of the week because, again, we want all eyes on it. We normally approve it in March. We do have some time because of the legislation last year that passed. In the past, we would have to have our annual report posted, and now we're given another 30 days. So we do have more time, but as we talked about last year, we want to continue to meet our current deadline. So our plan is to have it done and to have it approved at next month's meeting. So we will be sending it out for edits and all eyes on this, and then hopefully have the final copy at our board meeting in March for final approval.
Any discussion? Then we'll move to the next item under review, which is the decision memo for funding county programs in the future. May I have a motion to approve?
It's going to be more of a discussion.
Oh.
But-
Any,
We need a motion to discuss?
Lindsay was going to discuss it, but yeah, we probably need a motion.
a motion to discuss?
I'll move. So moved.
Second?
There's nothing to discuss, is there? I'm sorry, was there?
I don't think there's a decision memo.
Is there an attachment?
No, I don't think there's a
there
decision
wasn't.
memo.
Nothing to discuss. I mean, there's nothing to move to discuss. We didn't
Okay.
track that up.
So you can just discuss it.
I think I'm up. I wanted to follow up on our conversation about funding the county programs, and I know we talked about this. I'd hoped we would talk about this in our finance committee, but due to the timing of this, I know there's interest from the county to get some feedback on us on our intentions with this, and I wanted to open a discussion that personally I'm not comfortable with making a statement that I want to cut that funding in our next allocation cycle. I don't think that gives proper time to ensure transition over to the other payers and gives them the time that they need to make sure there is no disruption in those programs. So, but I also feel that this is an opportunity for us to look at, additional dollars to client services. So I am in favor of putting forth a motion that we would consider funding as appropriate and as recommended by staff in FY26 but that going into FY '27, that we would not have an intention to do that at a board, which would give the county administration more than a full year, to figure out their budgeting plans in order to make sure that there's no gaps in services. Once again, this is in regards to the police social worker program and the 22nd Judicial Courts. So I wanted to share my feelings on that and see if anybody else wanted to open discussion as well.
I'm trying to pull up Carolyn.
Thanks. I appreciate, we did talk about this at Board Development Day. I appreciate continued discussions on any areas where we see we can put dollars elsewhere, or maybe create relationships, or I think, this one of the areas was waiting on legislation for this one and seeing if that passes. I would feel, and I actually had it in my member comments about, and I mentioned it at Board Development Day, maybe a better, what I'd feel more comfortable with is at like a future meeting, having more of a holistic discussion on the kind of gaps. I know Christine had mentioned it at Board Development Day. Really getting a big picture of the gaps we have, or the services we may need, or the, where we may, no longer need some, or, really, to single these out, I still just don't feel comfortable singling them out without really knowing the impact that would have. I do appreciate, and I know the county would appreciate, not doing it immediate all at once, which was the discussion we had at Board Development Day. But I think I'd rather have a larger discussion rather than just, these two right now and making any sort of, I do think with any program, if there's any point we had talked about, if there's any, that a heads up on just eliminating any program would be a good plan to have, rather than just cutting it out, to really just cut it out at this point. So I'm not ready to make any sort of decision or movement. I would like to, within, I suggested maybe like April or May, kind of having a more in-depth discussion, not only on these two programs, but also on the prior to allocations, really finding ways to, I don't know, Chris articulated it so much better than I am right now. So finding those gaps and finding out where services are, and then maybe where we really want to focus moving forward.
I'm trying to pull Chris up.
Hey, so I do think it's important for us to kind of conscientiously and systematically review our needs assessment to ensure that the services we currently have aligned with the identified needs are a good match, and so we can recruit services if we don't have services to meet existing needs. At the same time, I'm kind of cognizant of the impact of services and funding on rapid decision change. And so, my inclination is to say, yeah, more advanced warning if a funding source is going to shift from here to the county for the police social worker, 22nd Judicial, this specialty courts, the most notice we could give, if that were a thing that the board wanted to do, would be the most advantageous. So I kind of feel favorably toward, right now, the idea of a good advance opportunity to have that discussion together, and to assure people that decision is not going to be made precipitously.
Any further discussion?
I just wanted to remind the board that at Board Development Day, the reason why, Lindsay was going to follow up on this tonight and at the finance meeting, is because at Board Development Day, that came up is the majority of the board members had voted with your green little stickies on that being something that you did want to do, was to have more client services and to look at more client services dollars by cutting the 2 county programs from mental health board funding and back to the county. But in talking with Lindsay, again, we have talked about, and even at the Board Development Day, of not making any major decisions for fiscal year '26, and that's where, Lindsay was proposing giving advance notice and having it not be anything that is immediate, but having it something that would be fiscal year '27, if our situation, doesn't change on a revenue side. So I do think that was, the motion that the board was aligned on, and that's where Lindsay just kind of wanted some direction because we felt like this was something that was already discussed and had a majority of support. So again, whatever the board wants to do as far as continued discussion on this, but just wanted to report back what you had all made decisions on.
Carolyn has a comment.
Yeah, thanks. And I've kind of said this in the past too. The main issue I have with it making any sort of movement on this tonight is I have nothing before me to move on. Like, again, there was nothing in our packet on it. I know we had discussion on Board Development Day. I have no problem continuing those discussions, but I don't even know what I would be voting on. So like it really is helpful if I know as a board member what I would be voting on, but it's also really helpful if those that are reviewing the packet would know what we'd be voting on. So like in this particular case, I mean, if it's going to affect 2 programs, it would have been nice to give them a heads up as to what we would even be voting on. So if they felt like they needed to come for public comment, that they could come and speak. I have no problem continuing this discussion, but in the future, if you want my vote on something, I would like to have that information presented when I'm reviewing the packet and not just like kind of, and nothing, I wouldn't even know, honestly, right now, I wouldn't even know. I mean, you said it, but like, I really need it in front of me to see what it is I'm voting on. And I really need to have that opportunity to have discussions or do my own personal investigation into things or looking at background or just, so I've asked this before, like, the more paperwork I have, the better, and the more, I don't feel comfortable voting on something that I don't even have in front of me. No, she was proposing it, and that's what she was suggesting, so.
I would concur. When I was looking at the board package, it was referring to a decision memo, and I actually had sent a request. I don't see it in the package, so I would recommend tabling it until March or April.
I concur with everybody's comments so far. I would recommend that we come up with a list of funding beyond what has been previously discussed for proposal for further discussion, so we can go back to those funded agencies and let them know that this is our intent. And it's not an intent to exclude them from that process, but based on our own budgetary cuts and limitations that we have, that we face every year, if staff could come up with some suggestions, and then the board can review those, and then we can come back with the information and make a pliable decision on what we're gonna do for the future. That would be my recommendation, if we can do that with some more information so we can make these informed decisions.
Any further discussion? So I would recommend that we table further discussion until,
You don't need a table. There's no decision. It's just a discussion.
okay,
There's no, yeah.
it's all right.
So I know I'm late coming in, but I want to get clarity on what we just did. So we didn't need a motion because we weren't voting. I understand that. And I also understand wanting clarity because all we sort of have is a bullet. So it is the decision, not decision, because I want to choose my words carefully. It would have been better if we'd had like a paragraph saying this is what Lindsay plans to say, but we're not voting. Like, is that what would have rectified? Like, I just want to make sure I'm really clear on everything we just went through, so we don't have another meeting in the future where we're missing a paragraph or a page. I apologize if that is an overly simple question, but I don't want to have gone through this and not have anything come out of it in order to move us forward. So, sorry if that's a dumb question.
I'm trying to pull Carolyn up.
Assuming you were directing it at me.
It's a procedural question.
Yeah, and so, and I'll clarify, because Lindsay did say she was ready to move on it. I mean, that's why I mentioned it, because if you're gonna take a action on something and make a motion to move it forward, there should be something actually presented as to what it is, and be it a decision memo, be it, you know, a recommendation, something back to staff, something, like, however you're gonna move on it, it should be in the packet so that, you know, the public can have access to it and see what we're planning to do, and then we would be able to have that, you know, motion and discussion as we do with the other items. I don't think it's appropriate, and I don't even know, I mean, I know they are listed for action or discussion, but I don't even know if you really don't have something presented. I just think it could open up potential for, you know, just lack of transparency. So to have, the more information you can put in the packet, the more helpful it is to everybody, and that in particular, that action that you're gonna take, having that wording, having what it is in the packet for the public to see, for us to see prior to the meeting, you know, that 48-hour notice is critical in my book.
Lindsay?
I will say that, you know, I opened this up by not making a very formal, I said I was thinking about a motion because this is a discussion, and I feel like we keep on having a discussion about how we want to have a discussion. And for me, I want us to talk about specifically our hesitations, your thoughts on it. There are people on our board that I have not heard opinions about this particular topic, and/or what exact information maybe would be useful and helpful in that decision-making. I've totally heard from Carolyn and Chris about, you know, the look for all gaps and that. So for me, this was an opening of just, here's where I'm at on this topic as a follow-up to something we already talked about. So, and then, you know, I absolutely understand if there is a formal decision memo, obviously it should be in there, and there should be opportunities for people to have advance notice. So just throwing out there kind of where my brain was at when I started this discussion.
One moment, I'm trying to pull Amy up.
And I will be quick. No, I genuinely appreciate the clarification because it is unusual to only have a discussion without us making a decision after. So I genuinely appreciate it. I was not trying to waste time by going through that. I appreciate the advance notice. I know maybe this would have looked a little bit different if there had been finance prior to the full board. Maybe this would have just been discussed in the smaller committee. But thank you. That was genuinely helpful.
I'm trying to pull Linda up. Linda?
Thank you. Thank you. Being new on the board and with more formal Robert's Rules of Order, my question is also more procedural. So is this something that will come up in finance as a bigger discussion, or are we suggesting an additional meeting where the board will meet additionally to talk about this? To me, there was no action taken other than we're going to have a discussion about it and more paperwork in the future, but are we making, is somebody responsible for bringing this up again, or is that the finance committee, or who is it? I don't understand what just happened.
One moment, we have John in the queue.
Thanks. Lindsay, you brought something up, and it was just a question, comment. Were you looking for comments or suggestions from us to see where we would like to, funding of county programs in the future? Were you looking for input from us? Because you said you heard something from Christine and Carolyn, but I think I had mentioned in probably my first meeting or one of the finances that if you found, or if we found, or there was a lot of duplicity in services, that maybe we could, put a little bit of direction on, either merging or, possibly, thinning out some of the duplicities of the same programs. So if you were looking for something from me, it would be something in that direction. I don't know if that helps in any way, but this way it would be something that we could take a look at and discuss, in the future.
I'm pulling up Lindsay.
I'll go in reverse order. So thank you. This was a follow-up to a discussion from Board Development Day, which I know you weren't able to join us for that. So I'm sorry, maybe there's some missing context for you. We were looking to just isolate a specific conversation around the county-funded programs where there might be an opportunity to not lose services. That sort of grew into a bigger conversation, which I think got echoed this evening by Carolyn and Chris, about a larger process of looking at all funded providers before making decisions about that. Balancing sort of the requests also from county that we give them as much notice as possible. So trying to balance out our own process while not wanting to let too much time go by where we would make a decision that would put them in, less of a spot to plan accordingly. I hope that answers that question. And then Linda, so I was looking for discussion specifically from board members on their thoughts, feelings about those two programs, any concerns that would have been brought up in our finance meeting. Our finance meeting was meant to discuss this. It was unfortunately rescheduled due to quorum issues to this upcoming Tuesday, where we were going to open this up into further discussion. So I do believe this, I'm not exactly sure the language of how this was put on this agenda, but it was put on this agenda to leave space so that we could begin a discussion about that, to hear input from anybody that wanted to give specific input to that ahead of the Finance Committee meeting that's getting rescheduled for next Tuesday. So, yeah.
Any further discussion? Then we'll move on. Any member comments? With that,
Thanks. Bear with me for a second, I have a few. I haven't said anything in a while, so, in member comments. I say plenty every meeting, but, so I just wanted to follow up on a couple things. One, at the last meeting, I know there were some questions that I had when we did the approval of changing line items, funds from line items, and and I made reference to it earlier, those line items that will go to zero on the overtime salaries, the tuition reimbursement, the special studies, and the consulting, that we changed those. I think and I was trying to look, I don't have exactly if they were all zeroed out or if consulting was down to 5,000. And I had asked that, this had been a pattern that I thought I had seen, and made reference to the perception that it does create, and then I got a little pushback after that meeting, and, which is fine, so it caused me to dig in and do my homework, and I just wanted to report back that, you know, I wanted to make sure my perception was somewhat of a reality as well as to what was happening, and so when I'm reporting back that, and bear with me, I'm going to throw numbers, and if you want them later, I'm happy to provide them to you. But in fiscal year '24, we started the year at overtime with 5,000 and ended up with it at 5,000, which was great that we kept it in the budget at 5,000, but we didn't use any of it. Special studies, we had at 5,000. By the end of the year, we had somewhere along the line eliminated that. And this is going to be another discussion at finance because that line came off completely. And then consulting was 10,000. We at some point went down to 5,000, but we only used 1,000. And tuition was at 3,000, went down to 500. If you go into fiscal year '23, the overtime was at 5,000, and it went down, we zeroed it out at some point during the year. Special studies was 5,000, and it was actually eliminated as a line item. Consulting was 10,000, we went down to 5,000 at some point during the year and only used 1,000. And tuition was 3,000, and we eliminated that line item by the end of the year. And if you go back to fiscal year 2022, overtime was at 5,000. It stayed at, and it was done a little different than, it stayed at 5,000, but we used 0. Special studies was 5,000 at the beginning of the year, and by the end, it stayed at 5,000, but we used 0 of it. And the consulting was at 10,000, and we only used 1,000, and at that point, tuition didn't exist in the budget at all. So I just wanted to clarify that the reason those comments were made, because again, we were taking overtime salaries that started the year at 5,000, going to 0, tuition at 3,000, going to 0, special studies at 5,000, going to 0, and then consulting, I can't remember, I'd have to look back, I apologize if it went to 5 or 0. But point being, all of those line items had been eliminated all of those years, and I will take responsibility for this too, that I did not ask these questions before. You know, I have one budget under my belt, and I will now know moving forward that if we can take that line item, so what I'm getting at is maybe in finance we can talk about keeping that budget the same so we know like the budget, how it started on day one, and maybe where it's at as to the actual we're working off of, and then the actual by the end of the year. So we actually, you know, really know what we approved, what it is projected to be, and what it actually ends up at. So we have a better idea then when we go into that next year of what line items maybe we can eliminate altogether. It seems like there's some that we've never used in the last 3 years, 4 years now. So again, just trying to find and fine tune those, but you know, those comments were made because I saw a pattern, and I did confirm that pattern, so I wanted to.
Can you reiterate what those comments were that you made?
I said that there was the perception that money was being put into accounts that were later then taken out.
That there was a perception of who was, you made more comments.
I'm not gonna, okay, right now it's right now it's my member comments, so I'm not gonna respond to that. You can watch the video.
Point of order's been called.
Thank you. I do have some other comments to make. I also want to make a comment on legislation that was brought up, because I asked about it at Board Development Day, and I did have the opportunity after that it had been filed the day before Board Development Day, actually, that House Bill 3847. And I wanted to point out, you know, as much as you know, we were all very disappointed in what had happened with the sales tax or property tax to sales tax. I also think there was a very clear message from the county board that any sort of referendum that would go forward again to do any sort of increase would have to wait. And I think in particular, I mean, it's only been, you know, I thought we all agreed that, you know, a year was going to take us a year to really understand what we were going to see, how we were going to handle it. And I think the county board is even wanting 2 years to see how things fall out. And So they weren't even willing to have discussions to put, well, this is just in my discussions with some of them, that to put a referendum on there. But what House Bill 3847 actually does, and I apologize, I have it right here. I had it ready to go, and now I don't know where it's at. It actually would increase, shoot. I'm so prepared, and now it's right here. It would, it actually says that if a county or a mental health board that goes from sales or property tax to sales tax, that, this is really crazy, didn't have the same amount, oh, here it is, because I don't want to mess it up. It says, property tax to a special county occupation tax and is receiving less revenue under the special county occupation tax should automatically have the county occupation tax increased to the next quarter increment to maintain current operations without disruption. And what this is proposing is actually doubling the sales tax that was put in on referendum. And I just think that if we want to get involved in legislation and advocacy for legislation on behalf of the Mental Health Board, I think that we either need to put in some sort of legislative agenda or policy or tenets, because I think in particular this one, I don't feel comfortable with as a board member. It's, a tax increase, and it's a tax increase without us having say in it. I mean, this is, so I think that this is, if we're going to support something like this, that we as a board really need to set that direction. And I say this because I know, and John may have been on county board with me when this has happened, it's happened with other legislation, that, if you start taking positions on something as a body, that it can get out of control really quickly. And especially one, dealing with taxes and increase in taxes, I just think it's better to not take a position on it unless you really are the ones that are driving that. And we as a board did not drive this legislation. So I just want to make it clear that I don't think that until we have a further conversation that the Mental Health Board should have any sort of advocacy or weighing in on this legislation. And if we want to, I think that should be a further discussion of this board, a future topic if you guys want, and that is all. Thank you.
Any additional member comments? With that, I'm going to have to call an executive session. We're going to be going into executive session under the Open Meetings Act exception for appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, and the legal counsel for the public body, 5 ILCS 120/20C1, to discuss items as listed with legal counsel.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?